My name's Ethan Cole, and what I'm about to tell you isn't easy to put into words. I've gone over it in my head 1,000 times, trying to convince myself it was just a bad dream, or maybe the result of a tired mind playing tricks in the dark. But every time I close my eyes, I see it all again, as clear as the night it happened. It began in a way that didn't seem unusual at first, an ordinary evening in a small western town where the nights stretch on forever and shadows seem heavier than they ought to. I grew up in a place called Ridge Creek, a forgotten dot on the map, the kind of place where old saloons still stand half-rotting on Main Street, and tumbleweeds actually roll across the highway when the wind kicks up. Folks here keep to themselves. Secrets don't stay buried, but they don't get talked about either. That's just the way of things. My mom worked nights at the diner, so most evenings, I was home alone. At 22, I didn't need looking after, but she worried about me anyway, worried about the trouble I might stir up with the wrong crowd, or the dangers that seem to creep out of the desert when the sun goes down. She always had one friend who hovered around more than the others, Mary Ann Hale. To me, she was Mom's friend, the woman who showed up with pies or casseroles, always with too much perfume, always with a nervous laugh. She had that way about her, like she was hiding something but wanted you to notice. That night, I'll never forget the date, June 14th, I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, the window open just enough to let in the dry desert breeze. It was close to midnight. The house was silent except for the groan of the old wooden frame settling. And then, my phone buzzed. At first, I didn't bother to check. Probably some group chat lighting up, or a useless notification. But then it buzzed again. And again. When I looked down, my chest tightened. The message wasn't from one of my buddies. It wasn't from a stranger. It was from Mary Ann. And all it said was, "Can you talk? Now, let me pause here." Mary Ann had never once texted me directly before. She always called the house phone for Mom, or passed messages along through her. She had no reason to reach out to me, especially not at midnight. Something about the way those 3 words glowed on my screen made the hairs on my neck rise. I stared at it for a long minute, debating whether to answer. My better judgment told me to leave it alone, but curiosity, that old devil, got the better of me. I typed back, "Yeah, what's going on?" The 3 little dots appeared instantly. She was waiting. When her reply came through, it was longer, and it made my blood run cold. "Don't tell your mom I texted. Please. Just meet me behind the old feed store. I don't have anyone else I can trust." I sat up straight in bed. My room felt suddenly smaller, the air thicker. What could she possibly want from me? And why in God's name would she insist I keep it from Mom? I thought about ignoring her. About pretending I never saw the message. But deep down, I knew, I couldn't say no. The old feed store she mentioned sat at the edge of Ridge Creek, abandoned for years. Folks said it was haunted, though around here, everything was rumored to be haunted. It was the kind of place kids dared each other to sneak into, the kind of place you didn't go willingly after dark. And yet, 10 minutes later, there I was, slipping on my boots, grabbing my jacket, and stepping out into the heavy desert night. The moon hung low, casting silver light across the scrubland. Crickets chirped, and in the distance, a coyote's yelp echoed. Every sound felt amplified, like the desert itself was holding its breath. I walked fast, phone gripped tight in my hand. My mind spun with questions. Why me? Why there? Why now? By the time I reached the feed store, my nerves were buzzing like live wires. The building loomed in the moonlight, its windows dark and broken, the roof sagging like it might collapse any minute. I half expected to find nothing. To laugh it off as some weird misunderstanding. But then I saw her. Mary Ann stood in the shadows behind the building, arms wrapped tight around herself, like she was trying to keep from falling apart. When she saw me, she hurried forward, grabbing my hand with surprising strength. "Ethan, thank God. I didn't think you'd come." Her voice was shaky, her eyes darting to the darkness beyond us. "What's going on?" I asked. "Why here? Why not just call my mom?" At the mention of my mom, her grip tightened. "No, she can't know about this. Not yet. You understand." I didn't understand at all, but the desperation in her tone kept me from arguing. She glanced over her shoulder, then leaned close. "There are things about your family that you don't know. And if I don't tell someone tonight, I may never get the chance." Her words hit me like a stone to the chest. "What are you talking about?" I demanded. But before she could answer, a sound cut through the night. A crunch. Gravel shifting under a heavy step. Someone was out there, watching us. Mary Ann's face went pale. She pressed a finger to her lips, eyes wide with terror, and whispered. "They followed me." And right then, I knew, I wasn't walking back home the same person I'd been when I left. The sound of footsteps in the gravel froze me to the bone. Slow, deliberate, not rushed, not careless. Whoever it was, they wanted us to know they were there. Mary Ann's hand clamped around my arm. Her nails dug into my sleeve like talons. "They followed me," she whispered again, her voice shaking. "I knew it, I knew they wouldn't let me talk to you." "Who?" I asked, scanning the darkness beyond the crumbling feed store. "Who's out there?" But she didn't answer. The air felt charged, like a storm about to break. The moonlight spilled across the desert floor, silvering the dirt and scrub. Just beyond its glow, a shadow shifted, too tall to be a coyote, too still to be the wind. "Stay here," I muttered, though my voice came out thinner than I meant it to. I took a cautious step forward. That's when the figure moved. A man emerged from the edge of the lot, dressed in dark clothes, his face half hidden beneath the brim of a hat. He didn't rush. He didn't call out. He just stood there, maybe 20 feet away, silent as a gravestone. "Mary Ann," I said under my breath, "do you know him?" She didn't respond. Her whole body trembled like she might shatter apart. The man's voice cut the night. Low, rough, almost amused. "You shouldn't be here, boy." Every instinct told me to turn and run. But something in his tone, like he already knew me, like he was daring me, pinned me in place. "What do you want?" I called back, my voice steadier than I felt. His head tilted. A smile flickered in the dark. "It's not what I want. It's what she's got. And she knows she can't keep it from us forever." Mary Ann gasped beside me. "Don't listen to him," she hissed. "Don't believe a word." But the man took a step closer, and she pulled me back into the shadow of the building. Her eyes locked onto mine, wide and desperate. "Ethan, you have to trust me. I'll explain everything, but we can't do it here. If they catch me, if they catch us." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. The stranger shifted his weight, and the gravel crackled under his boots. He was closer now. Too close. Panic surged in my chest. "Run," Mary Ann whispered. "Now." We bolted around the side of the feed store, boots pounding the dirt. My lungs burned as the cold desert air rushed in. Behind us, heavy footsteps followed. "Faster," Mary Ann cried. "He won't stop until he gets it." "Gets what?" I demanded between breaths. But she didn't answer. We cut across the scrubland, the brittle brush scraping our legs. My heart hammered in my ears. I risked a glance back. The man wasn't far, maybe 30 yards behind, moving with a terrifying calmness, like he knew no matter how fast we ran, we wouldn't get away. Mary Ann veered suddenly, yanking me toward a half-buried culvert where a trickle of water ran. We crouched low, ducking into the shadows. For a long, suffocating moment, all I could hear was my pulse and the rush of blood in my ears. Then, footsteps. Slow again. Crunch, crunch. He was circling, hunting. I held my breath. Mary Ann pressed her hand over her mouth, her body trembling so violently I thought the sound alone might give us away. The footsteps grew nearer, then paused. Silence. The desert was still, too still. Then, his voice again. "Close. You think you can hide. You've run long enough, Mary Ann. It ends tonight." Her eyes filled with tears. She clutched my arm so tight I thought she might break it. But then, just as suddenly as he appeared, the footsteps began to fade. Moving away. Slowly. We waited, 30 seconds. A minute. 2. Neither of us dared breathe too loud. Finally, Mary Ann exhaled, a trembling, broken sound. "He's gone," I whispered. She shook her head fiercely. "No. He never leaves. He just waits." I stared at her. My chest was still heaving, but my mind was racing faster than my heart. "What the hell is going on? Who is that? What does he want from you?" Her face was pale in the moonlight, streaked with fear. "It's not just me he wants. It's you, Ethan. It's your family. And if you don't listen to me, if you don't let me tell you the truth, you'll end up just like your father." The words hit me harder than the chase itself. My father. I never knew him. He died when I was barely old enough to walk. Mom never talked about him, only that it was an accident out on the ranch. The kind of vague story people in Ridge Creek accepted without question. Now Marianne was looking at me with haunted eyes, and suddenly, all the silence around my father's death felt like it had been hiding something. "What about my father?" I demanded. But before she could answer, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She yanked it out, glanced at the screen, and went even paler. "They know," she whispered. "They know I'm with you." The desert felt like it closed in around us. "Marianne, you need to start explaining," I said. My voice was sharper now, fueled by equal parts fear and anger. She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought she might collapse right there in the dirt. Then she drew a shaky breath. "Your father didn't die in an accident, Ethan. He was killed. And the same people who did it are still here. Still watching. Still waiting." My stomach dropped. The ground beneath me felt unsteady, like I might fall straight through it. "What are you talking about?" I managed. Her hands trembled as she grabbed mine. "They're called the Hollow Men. And if you don't believe me, you will, because now that you've seen him, he won't stop until he's finished what he started 20 years ago." The words echoed in my head like gunshots. The Hollow Men. My father. Killed. Nothing made sense, but I knew one thing for certain. Whatever I had stepped into that night, there was no turning back. For a long moment, I just sat there in the dirt beside the culvert, staring at Marianne like she'd lost her mind. The Hollow Men. My father. Killed. It sounded like the kind of story old drunks spun at the saloon to scare kids. But the terror in her voice, the way her hands shook as she clutched mine, none of that was pretend. "Start talking," I said. "No more running, no more half-truths. What are the Hollow Men? And what the hell did they want with me?" Marianne's eyes darted nervously over my shoulder, as if expecting the shadowy figure to appear again any second. Then she leaned close, lowering her voice. "They're not a gang. They're not just men. They're something older. Something that doesn't belong under the sun. People think of them as ghosts, or demons, or worse. But I've seen them, Ethan. I've seen what they do. And once you've seen them too, once they've seen you, they don't let go." Her words cut through me like icy wind. "Stop speaking in riddles," I snapped. "My dad, what happened to him? Tell me the truth." She swallowed hard, her perfume sharp even in the night air. "Your father found something he wasn't supposed to. A relic, buried deep out in the western desert, older than this town, older than Ridge Creek itself. He thought it was just a piece of history, something to sell or study. But it belonged to them. The Hollow Men." Her grip on my arm tightened until my fingers went numb. "They killed him for it. And they would have killed your mother too, but she made a deal." My breath caught in my throat. "A deal?" Marianne nodded. "To keep you safe. To keep you out of their reach. But the deal had terms, Ethan. It had limits. And now those limits are up." Her words rattled in my skull. I wanted to laugh, to deny it all, to call her crazy. But deep down, I couldn't. Not after what I'd just seen. That man, if he was even a man, his presence alone felt wrong, like the shadows bent around him. I rubbed a hand across my face. "So you're telling me my mom knew about this? That she's been keeping it from me my whole life?" Marianne looked away. The silence was enough of an answer. Anger flared in my chest, burning hotter than my fear. "Why are you telling me this now? Why not years ago?" Her eyes filled with tears, shimmering in the moonlight. "Because your mother trusted me to keep quiet. Because I owed her that much. But tonight, I got a message. They're moving again. And when I saw your name, when I saw what they've planned, I couldn't stay silent." My pulse thudded in my ears. What did they want from me? She hesitated, then spoke in a voice so low I barely heard it. "They want you to finish what your father started. To bring them back what was lost. And if you don't, they'll take you. Body and soul." A chill rolled through me. I tried to steady my breath, but the desert air felt heavier by the second. "This is insane," I muttered. "I'm just some guy. I don't know anything about relics or curses or whatever this is." Marianne's gaze sharpened. "You think you're ordinary. Ethan, you're not. Your father's blood runs in you. That's why they've waited. That's why they've followed. And that's why you have to make a choice, before they make it for you." Before I could answer, a rustling sound cut through the night. Not footsteps this time, something else. I froze. Marianne went rigid beside me. From the brush behind us, a shape slithered. At first I thought it was an animal, maybe a snake or a coyote. But then I saw the outline. Human. Crawling low to the ground, limbs bending wrong, too long, too thin. Mary Ann stifled a gasp. "We have to move," she whispered. "Now." I grabbed her hand, and we scrambled out of the culvert. My legs felt like lead, but adrenaline shoved me forward. Behind us, the crawling figure rose slowly to its feet, jerking, twitching like a puppet on broken strings. Even from a distance, I could see its face, or rather, the lack of one. Smooth. Hollow. My stomach lurched. Every instinct screamed at me to run, and I obeyed. We tore across the desert, the dry earth, cracking under our boots. Mary Ann pulled me toward an old windmill in the distance, its metal blades creaking in the night breeze. We ducked inside the rusting frame, collapsing against the support beams. My chest burned, my throat raw. Mary Ann's face was ashen, but her eyes were sharp now, steel beneath the fear. "You saw it," she said. "You saw what they are." I nodded, unable to form words. "That was one of the hollow men," she continued. "Or what's left of one. They don't all look human anymore. Not after so long. But they're bound to this land, Ethan. Bound to what your father took from them. And now, they've bound themselves to you." Her words sank like stones into my gut. I wanted to believe this was still some wild dream. That I'd wake up in my bed, my phone buzzing with nothing more than spam messages. But the raw scrape of my throat, the ache in my legs, the echo of that faceless figure burned into my brain, they were all too real. "What do I do?" I asked finally, my voice breaking. "If they want me, if they're not gonna stop, how do I fight back?" Mary Ann looked at me with something like pity. "You don't fight them, you survive them. And the only way to do that, is to find what your father hid. Before they do." Her words settled over me like a shroud. Find what my father hid. Face the hollow men. I had no idea where to even begin. But one thing was clear, midnight was just the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Mary Ann sat across from me beneath the creaking windmill, her perfume faint against the sharp scent of desert dust. Her words kept circling in my head like vultures, "Find what your father hid, before they do." But I didn't know where to start. My father had been gone for 20 years, leaving behind little more than silence and shadows. By dawn, Mary Ann was restless, pacing the dirt. "We can't stay here," she said. "The longer we sit still, the easier it is for them to corner us." "Where do we go?" I asked. She hesitated. "Your house. There may be something there, something your mother kept. She wouldn't throw away his things." She couldn't. The thought of dragging this nightmare straight to Mom's doorstep made me sick, but I didn't have a better plan. So as the sun rose over Ridge Creek, painting the desert in rust and gold, we set out. The town was just waking when we slipped back into the neighborhood. Old men sweeping porches, kids pedaling bikes. None of them knew the hollow men were lurking in the shadows just beyond. When we reached my house, I stopped short on the porch. The door was ajar. I knew I'd locked it the night before. My chest tightened. I pushed the door open slow, the hinges groaning. Inside, the air felt wrong, like the whole house had been holding its breath. "Stay behind me," I muttered. We crept through the living room. Nothing looked stolen, but things were shifted. A chair pulled slightly out of place. A picture frame tilted. My gut clenched. "They've already been here," Mary Ann whispered. "In my parents' bedroom, the room Mom never let me enter, drawers were pulled open, clothes scattered. But what caught my eye was the old cedar chest at the foot of the bed. It was open, empty. "Damn it," Mary Ann hissed. "That's where she kept his things. They beat us to it." I stepped closer, scanning the floor. Something glinted faintly beneath the bed frame. I reached down and pulled out a small leather-bound journal, dusty and worn. My hands trembled as I flipped it open. Faded handwriting filled the pages, my father's. The entries were scattered, half-coded, but one phrase kept repeating. "The hollow men wait in the dry places. The relic calls to them. I must bury it where the desert swallows light." I stared at those words, my mouth dry. What does this mean? Mary Ann's eyes lit with both fear and urgency. "It means he left us a trail. If we follow it, we might find the relic before they do." Before I could answer, a sharp creak came from the hallway. Someone else was in the house. I snapped the journal shut. Mary Ann grabbed my wrist, her nails biting into my skin. "They're here." We slipped into the closet, pulling the door nearly shut. My breath rasped loud in my own ears. Footsteps echoed across the wooden floor. Slow, measured. Through the crack in the door, I saw him, the same faceless figure from the desert, taller now, its head tilting as if sniffing the air. Its limbs moved wrong, bending at sharp, unnatural angles. Mary Ann pressed her face against my shoulder to stifle a sob. The creature paused at the cedar chest, lowering its head like it was listening. Then, slowly, it turned toward the closet. My heart stopped. The hollow face hovered inches from the door. I could feel the weight of its presence, the air thinning around us. And then, just as suddenly, it turned and drifted back down the hall. We waited until the sound of its steps faded. Neither of us moved for what felt like eternity. Finally, Mary Ann whispered, "We can't stay. We have to leave town. Tonight." I clutched the journal to my chest. Not without finding out what he meant. Where the desert swallows light. That's the only chance we have. She looked at me like she wanted to argue, but the fight drained from her eyes. She knew I was right. That night, we drove. Past the edge of Ridge Creek, past the broken fences and cattle skulls bleaching in the sun. The desert stretched endless, swallowing the horizon. I flipped through my father's journal as the headlights cut through the dark. Sketches of strange symbols. Maps with circles drawn in the margins. The same phrase over and over, where the desert swallows light. Mary Ann kept her eyes on the road, knuckles white against the wheel. "There's a place like that," she murmured. "The Devil's Basin. Locals say the sun never reaches the bottom. People go there and don't come back." A shiver crawled up my spine. "That's where he hid it." She nodded grimly. "Then that's where we're going." But even as the words left her mouth, headlights flared in the rearview mirror. A black truck. No plates. No sound but the growl of its engine. It had been waiting for us. The hollow men were giving chase. The black truck tailed us for miles, its headlights glaring in the mirror like twin suns. No matter how fast Mary Ann pushed the car, it stayed locked behind us, steady, patient. "They're hurting us," she said, her voice tight. "Forcing us straight to the basin." The road grew rougher as we left the highway. Dirt and rock kicked up under the tires. Ahead, the land opened into a yawning black chasm, the Devil's Basin. A scar in the desert. The engine roared as Mary Ann killed the headlights and pulled us onto a narrow trail. The truck slowed, then stopped, idling at a distance like a predator waiting to strike. We got out, the desert wind howling around us. I clutched my father's journal, my lifeline, and stared at the void ahead. It was darker than night itself, like the earth had swallowed the stars. "Where the desert swallows light," I whispered. Mary Ann nodded. "This is it." We climbed down into the basin, the ground jagged and loose underfoot. The walls rose high around us, cutting off the moonlight. Shadows pressed close, heavy and suffocating. I flipped open the journal, following the crude map my father had drawn. 20 paces south, past a split boulder. 10 steps east toward the hollow tree. My hands shook as I traced his path. At the base of the tree, half buried in the dirt, we found it. A wooden box, weathered and cracked. With age. Mary Ann dropped to her knees, clawing at the soil until we freed it. She glanced at me, her face pale but resolute. "Open it." I hesitated, every nerve in my body screaming. But I had to know what my father died for. Inside was a shard of stone, blacker than night, etched with symbols that seemed to writhe in the dim light. Holding it made my skin crawl, like whispers were slithering straight into my skull. Mary Ann gasped. The relic. A sound broke the silence, footsteps. Many footsteps. We looked up, and they were there. Dozens of them. Figures lining the rim of the basin, faceless, hollow, their bodies twitching unnaturally. The hollow men. And leading them, was the man in the hat. His voice rolled down into the pit like thunder. "You've done well, boy. Just like your father." Rage and terror collided in my chest. "You killed him." The man's grin was a slash of darkness. "He refused us. But you've brought it back. The debt is paid." Mary Ann stepped in front of me, her arms spread wide. "No, he doesn't belong to you." The man tilted his head. "He always did. His mother knew. That was the deal." The ground lurched beneath me. My mother. She knew. All those years, keeping secrets, warning me never to wander too far into the desert. It wasn't protection. It was containment. I staggered back, clutching the relic. It pulsed in my hands, heat searing into my skin. Whispers filled my head, voices that weren't mine. "Ethan, Marianne said, her voice urgent. Listen to me. You can destroy it. Your father tried, but he wasn't strong enough. You are. Throw it into the basin's heart, into the dark where no light reaches. The hollow men shifted, their bodies twitching faster, angrier. The man in the hat stepped closer, his voice a command. Give it to us, or we'll take you with it. My chest felt like it might crack open. I looked at Marianne, her eyes pleading. I looked at the hollow men, dozens of faceless watchers, waiting. And then I made my choice. With a roar that tore from somewhere deep in me, I hurled the relic into the abyss. It vanished into the darkness below, swallowed whole. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the basin shook. A scream, not human, not earthly, ripped through the night. The hollow men convulsed, their forms unraveling, melting into the shadows. The man in the hat staggered, his face flickering like smoke. You fool, he roared. You've damned us all. And then he was gone, along with the rest. Dissolved into nothing. The basin grew still. The night air was heavy, but clear. Marianne collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face. It's over, she whispered. For now. I sank beside her, my body trembling, my mind a storm. For now. What do you mean? She looked at me with eyes full of sorrow. The relic isn't destroyed, just buried deeper. Someday, they'll claw their way back to it. And when they do, they'll come for you again. We climbed out of the basin as dawn broke over Ridge Creek. The sun painted the desert in gold, but it didn't warm me. Not anymore. Back home, Mom sat at the kitchen table, her face lined with worry. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. But I couldn't look at her the same way. Not after knowing the truth. I walked past her without a word, the weight of the night heavy on my shoulders. Because I knew this wasn't the end. The hollow men were gone, yes. But not destroyed, not forever. And one day, maybe tomorrow, maybe years from now, they would return. And when they did, I would be ready.